I was hitchhiking. I was in Oregon at Crater Lake, which is about at least 500 miles from here. And I was going to pack up. I was just stay in a motel for the night. But this truck comes along with people in the back of it. And I guess in those days you could do it. And I said, I'd like a ride. I'm going to Ukiah. So I jumped in the back of a pickup and drove through the night and got here July 4th at 3 a.m. And I walked straight in. The feeling was like coming home.
The city of 10,000 Buddhas is home today to 300 people, living on roughly 1,000 acres of mostly undeveloped open country in Northern California. What has been developed since its founding in 1974 is an all-encompassing Buddhist community of integrated institutions, a city not only in name, but in function. Surrounding the monastery with its various Dharma and meditation halls, there are K-12 schools, a university, library, student dormitories, a residential neighborhood for lay people, an organic farm, dining halls, and a vegetarian restaurant. Though all of this still relies upon donations from overseas organizations, the city supplies its own water and grows some of its own produce on site. Solar panels generate its electricity. Volunteers living in the city and in the nearby city of Ukiah maintain its ambitious scope and scale, serving as maintenance workers, farmers, university administrators, and teachers. All of this started with one man, Venerable Master Hsien Hua. Born in 1918 in China, he spent many years studying classic Chinese philosophical texts and training in various monasteries across China. With the help of his disciples in the United States, he established the Buddhist lecture hall in San Francisco in 1958. A decade later, one pivotal retreat in the summer of 1968 would lay the groundwork for the founding of the city of 10,000 Buddhas. It was called the Shurangama Study and Practice Summer Session, where some of his earliest disciples, like Doug Powers and Marty Verhoeven, were in attendance.
He was offering a certain kind of extension of the kind of freedom that we were kind of working for in the 60s and 70s. I went over to the monastery as a summer 6-week phenomenological investigation of a monastery. And we were just hippies in the 60s, in Berkeley. So from that time, there was about, 11 people in this warehouse. And so I went over there and did sessions, week-long sessions every few months.
The summer session was held in the Buddhist lecture hall in an old warehouse on 15th Street. Over the course of 96 days, Master Hua lectured on the Shurangama Sutra from 5 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, taking only one half-day break every Saturday. By the end of the 96 days, almost every student had taken refuge. But Master Hua's vision was much greater than one lecture hall. In 1973, the search was on to find a site upon which they could build the city of his dreams.
We were there for quite a few years before I actually drove him up to look at the city of 10,000 Buddha. We went to the current Buddha hall and I played basketball. That was a basketball court. He said, well, I think we might want to buy this. And I said, what would we possibly do with this? We've got, 14 people. There's no way that we can handle this place. It's like huge. It's got all its buildings and stuff. He said, no. He said, it'll be totally filled, no problem. But I had no imagination of that, so it just seemed like a lot of buildings and a lot of problems,
Long before it was the city of 10,000 Buddhas, this was the Mendocino State Hospital. Established in 1889, the hospital was host to a variety of rehabilitation programs, most notably for the substance abuse patients, psychiatric patients, and the criminally insane. It boasted 70 large buildings and over 2,000 rooms, 3 gymnasiums, a fire station, a swimming pool, and a basketball court. At one point, There were about 6,000 people living on the grounds, including both patients and staff. Ultimately, the facilities were closed in 1972 due to extreme water shortages. Doug Powers was responsible for the acquisition of the property. During negotiations, he served as a middleman between the owner and Master Hua, as the master could not speak much English and the owner spoke no Chinese. Master Hua purchased the property in 1976, and within 2 years, the city was officially opened. This quick turnaround was due in part to a sustainable strategy for the city's renovation. All 70 buildings were preserved in their original state and repurposed to accommodate the practical and spiritual goals of its new hosts.
We were on a shoestring. He came over with nothing from China, nothing. And so everything was very frugal and very parsimonious at the beginning. And one of the first building he looked at is the Tathagata Monastery for the men now. That used to be the facility for the criminally insane.
Well, I mean, the buildings are actually very incredible buildings. So you wouldn't want to tear, most of them you wouldn't want to tear down anyway, because they're constructed at a time when, man, nobody builds buildings like these anymore. It's just reimagining your kind of, the way you want to come at it in terms of how you're going to use the space.
This place was run on a central boiler system that was extremely expensive. Huge boilers and operating greasy rooms and everything like that. Somebody said at some point, we should take this thing down. It's no longer functional. It's ecologically disastrous. And somebody says, we don't have an earth store hall. And so, well, let's build one or let's make one from this. And so that's one thing you go to. All of the schools came from somebody's idea of, what do we do with these old Tudor buildings that were hospital wards? Let's turn this into a school. Oh, we got a gymnasium here. Where are we going to bow and worship? Well, let's turn the gymnasium into a Buddha hall. Where are we going to get the images? Let's make them. Master Hua would every morning wake up and craft 4 little Buddha images and gild them in gold and then drive up here and put them in the hall. And all those little Buddha images in the hall were handmade by him. This is how you do it. You don't go out and buy them or import them. You make them. So I think just even this room you're in now is converted with needing space for people like us and faculty. We had major assassinations, the 2 Kennedys and Kings in the 60s, and then the anti-war movement and civil rights, and then the beginning of the 70s into our period of the environmental consciousness that we were really ruining the planet. So there's a sense of wanting to do something. Conventional engagement wasn't doing the job. I was also inspired because I had read the autobiography of Master Xu Yun, Empty Cloud. And he did one of these pilgrimages in China. It's called 3 Steps, 1 Bow. And that really moved me.
In 1977, just 1 year after the city's opening, Marty Verhoeven, named Dharma Master Hung Chau at the time, embarked on a 2-year pilgrimage from Gold Wheel Monastery in Los Angeles to the city of 10,000 Buddhas. With him was Dharma Master Heng Sure, who had taken a vow of silence. Together, they traveled 600 miles, taking 1 bow every 3 steps for the entire journey.
Heng Sure had the idea to do the pilgrimage. I crazily volunteered to go along. I had no idea what I was getting into.
Leave the false and find the true. 10,000 Buddhas inside of you. Bow down and turn around. Look inside and see.
I saw myself sort of like John Muir, backpacking on the highway with redwood trees in the ocean, and a great adventure. And of course, it wasn't anything like that at all, for the most part. So that quickly changed. But Master Hua confirmed the notion. We said we wanted to bow for world peace and to turn back some of these disasters. He said, well, all disasters and all our problems begin with human greed, anger, and stupidity. And the only way to turn that around is get rid of it first in your own heart. Because by bowing selflessly to others, you will reduce yourself, and then maybe you'll have an impact on the world. So it changed from what our expectations were, somewhat romantic and chaotic, quixotic sort of, to something much more real. And so it was largely a silent pilgrimage. And at night we put on an oil lamp. We stayed in an old station wagon to move a mile a day, camped it at night, and studied the Avatamsaka Sutra. We would translate that together and write it down and kind of use that as a stimulus for the daily life we were living.
When I was still a layman here, one of my jobs was to be a cook. And at that time, I know you've interviewed Marty, he was doing his pilgrimage and he was quite near to Ukiah. So we'd drive out with the lunch for him because most times they would cook for themselves on a little primus stove. But when they got near, we started taking the food out to them, and it was really moving to see. They really had a presence when they were about them.
I was Man Friday. I was supposed to be the Dharma protector, but I bowed with Heng Sure, did the cooking, the meals, and so forth. And I would look at our map and think, oh my God, we come from Los Angeles, we're here, and we got how far to go yet, and how many months? And basically he said, if you're doing this right, you don't look back to where you were. It's gone. And do not look ahead to where you are going because it's not yet come. Just pay attention to the here and now. If you pay attention to the here and now, and if you're doing that, that's called Ishin. That's single-mindedness. And if you step in that way, you will certainly arrive. However, if you look back and look forward, you not only will not arrive, but you'll miss where you are. Well, first of all, I didn't really meet him in 75, 76. I met him prior to that, but in dreams only. I came over based on those dreams. Within a few months, I shaved my head and became a monk, and 2 days later, we're on the highway. And that was it.
If you're going to get into this, you're getting, kind of, let's go up not just do the trek through the Himalayas, but climb Everest, you go for it. I became a novice in October 1980. I got it's called the full ordination in October 1982. I returned to lay life in February 1994. When you take refuge, which is like formally becoming a Buddhist, you get a book, a certificate of your taking refuge, and this is the one I got in 1978. A bit of biographical information and a signature from the Venerable Master and his chop, we call it chop, his seal, 23rd of July 1978. He would sign them personally, and he would give you it's called the Dharma name. Even as a layman, you get a Buddhist name.
He said, this is not a place where there are 10,000 Buddhas. Well, why did you give it that name? He said, it's a place where 10,000 Buddhas will be made. Made from who? He said, from you guys. He said, I didn't come here to make statues of bronze and wood and marble. I came to make living, flesh and body Buddhas, sages, bodhisattvas, from the likes of all of you. And he said, in the future, this will be a smelting foundry for people realizing their full human potential.
The Tathagata Monastery has been home to the monks since the city's inception. Across campus, the nuns live in similar quarters known as the Joyous Giving House. Situated along the expansive countryside and quaint nature trails, these monasteries lend themselves to spiritual cultivation and quietude. And yet, just next door are the schools, teeming with children at recess on the playground or talking excitedly in the classroom, a chorus of noise and energy.
Mind me, you keep going, you.
One might imagine that these two institutions are in constant conflict. A monastery requires solitude, while a school requires camaraderie. How is it that these two places are able to not only coexist, but to actually complement each other?
It was an Earth Store retreat. This was in 1988. And Master Hsuan Hua brought along a group of his delegation of monks and nuns and lay people, and hosted an Earth Store retreat in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And I was blessed to be able to go to the retreat with my family. And I remember this huge hall filled with people every day. And this atmosphere and setting whereby people are reciting, bowing, and listening to the humble teachings of Master Hsuan Hua and his disciples left a very deep imprint in me.
This is Jin He. Since coming from Malaysia, she has taken on several important roles in the city as a nun, a professor at Dharma Buddhist University, and the principal of the girls' elementary and secondary schools. A mere 12 years old when she met Master Hua, she could not have foreseen her career in both education and religious life in the city. And yet, she was instantly drawn to its diverse opportunities.
I had a chance to come to the city of 10,000 Buddhas in, I believe, 1991. And it was during the Waterland Air Dharma Assembly, and it was a very many international devotees and disciples came. So the city of 10,000 Buddhas were packed with monastics and lay people. And I just fell in love with this place. There was no specific things or moments that touched me, but I had this thought that I wanted to come to school at the city of 10,000 Buddhas and to attend Instilling Goodness Developing Virtue School.
The Instilling Goodness Elementary School and Developing Virtue Secondary School, also known as IGDVS, are accredited private schools covering kindergarten through 12th grade, which offer both the standard state-approved curriculum in social studies, English, mathematics, and science, as well as electives in meditation, virtue studies, and Buddhism. At present, there are about 105 students. Kindergarten through 2nd grade are co-ed. From 3rd grade through high school, the students are divided into boys and girls. Established in 1976, the schools have been pillars of education and moral development for the city's youth going on 50 years.
I wanted very badly to ask him about coming to school here. There was a long line of disciples who wanted to speak to him. And finally, it was my turn. And I asked him, can I come to school here? And his response was, I can't answer your question. And I somehow didn't quite understand his answer. Only in the recent years when I was writing my dissertation, that I realized this first direct communication with Master Hua was really profoundly Chan. He was really reaching out to me to kind of bring out that nature in me that he didn't need to make the decision. The decision was actually mine. I actually returned to to the city of 10,000 Buddhas during his nirvana. It was a big shock. And I think within a week or even shorter, once I heard about his nirvana, I packed up my bags and I told myself, I'm not coming back. It was actually at that moment that I resolved to be a monastic. And I had beautiful black hair at that time, long, beautiful black hair that I adored. And within the week, I cut it, donated it, and it was a very, very memorable moment, such an important starting point, yeah.
So I came 2005 up here, I would say really kind of answering a deeper calling in my heart, wanting to walk a spiritual path. But it was very strange, I have to be honest. I remember every morning I would wake up and my first thought would be, Toto, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore.
While some come to the city of 10,000 Buddhas to pursue an education, others come to undergo monastic training and go through ordination. A rare few do both. Jin Sure is one of these few. Growing up in Silicon Valley and graduating from Stanford with a BS in physics and an MA in religious studies, he eventually moved to the city to find spiritual fulfillment. He spent his first 5 years in the city as a lay volunteer before entering the monastic training program and becoming ordained in 2013. He then went on to receive an MA in Buddhist Classics at Dharma Realm Buddhist University, where he is now an assistant professor.
In the monastery, it's a very tough schedule, at least the training here. You start at 4 a.m., you have, for 1 hour chanting, you have another hour of bowing. 6 to 7, you have meditation. 7 to 8, you recite an hour of sutra. 8 to 10, you do work and service. 10:30, you do a meal chant. 11 o'clock, you have your 1 meal a day to 12. 12:30, we do great compassionate repentance for an hour and a half. 2 o'clock, you go back to work to 4 o'clock. You have about maybe 45 minutes, an hour to kind of clean up and everything. 6:30 to 7:30, evening chanting. 7:30 to 9, lecture. 9 to 9:30, mantra recitation. every day. Except on the weekends, you add another 4 hours of recitation. That's the schedule. That's the schedule, okay? It's pretty intense. But what happens though, I found is you train in the external form, but the internal heart can actually feel very oppressed. And that was my experience inside. I felt like, I don't really want to do this, you know? I felt kind of like this kind of almost like an inner resentment for what's going on. And my sense is the training was actually a bit like the military. But when you actually look at the Buddhist tradition in itself, especially in India, he didn't set it up on a military model. He set it on a mentorship model. So when monks come to train, you find a mentor. And it's through the mutual care of a mentor and a student that the Dharma goes into the heart, and then you can really embody it.
I started as a tutor of 3 students at the City of 10,000 Buddhas. After being offered a tutor job, I was invited to actually teach Buddhist studies to a group of teenagers, a group of teenage girls. And it was a very challenging experience, trying to translate my understanding of Buddhism to teenagers in the West, in the United States. And during that time, it actually motivated me to further my studies and to actually learn how to teach better. And that was when I decided to pursue my college education.
Jin He first attended San Francisco State University in 2005 to study English literature. After graduating, she pursued an MA at Stanford School of Education and returned to the city to teach English and social studies. She then continued her education at Teachers College at Columbia University, obtaining an EDD in 2017. Such an academic track record is quite atypical for monastics, whose study and practice is focused solely on the Dharma. But Jin He sees her path as ultimately productive for both herself and the Buddhist youth.
I see my role as a nun as truly rooted in teaching. But traditionally, in the monastic setting, the role of the nun and being a scholar don't necessarily come together. But I believe Dharma Buddhist University and Instilling Goodness Developing Virtue School really provided that setting for me to actually test this hybrid identity. To me, Buddhist education is really about developing the inherent potentials in the youth, in the students. So I'm always thinking about, developing curriculum and pedagogy that can actually ignite that light within them.
I was born here, and so maybe like 95% American, 5% Chinese. And so what I found was in the monastery that the Dharma, as it was being presented to me, as I tried to apply it, actually didn't work. It wasn't the right medicine. And I didn't have a trust that the training would actually really be suitable for me. But what was a kind of a key moment for me was one of my friends, basically, although he's kind of a very straight talker, he said to me, if you don't become a monk here, I wouldn't want your karma. I said, what? What do you mean by you wouldn't want my karma? He said, because you've been here for all these years, 5 years, and before that I was also at Stanford, very much part of the community. So all these years you've been here, and you had a chance to learn from a lot of the senior teachers, like Doug and Marty and some of the monastics. When you leave, all that experience will be gone. That bridge will be gone, and you'll be responsible. So that's the karma. I said, really? Wow. And so I remember going back to my room, and before that I had a lot of doubts, like what else was to do with myself. It was almost like a camera going into focus. I said, actually, I'm supposed to become a monk here. And I think it came from a sense of gratitude for all the things I've received here, and a wish to carry it on.
Jin He has since served as an instructor for the Sangha and Laity Training Program, a seminary program for aspiring monks and nuns seeking full ordination. He also takes his experience to the greater Bay Area, training novice monks at Redwood Vihara in the Santa Cruz Mountains and teaching at the Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. Nevertheless, the city remains his primary home. The Dharma Realm Buddhist University, or DRBU, was founded in 1976, exactly 50 years ago, by Master Hua. The name itself is aspirational. The Dharma Realm represents the entire universe, an interconnected web of all phenomena, both physical and spiritual, originating from the mind. Like its name suggests, DRBU offers a comprehensive curriculum intended to combine education with religious practice. Students have the opportunity to earn an undergraduate and master's degree, as well as a graduate certificate in Buddhist translation. Doug Powers and Marty Verhoeven are both professors at DRBU, with Doug serving as president since 2025.
If you look at Buddhism properly, it is an educational system. It is not a religious, dogmatic, faith-based belief system. It's a transformative teaching, by definition. Therefore, there can't be any Buddhism without education. I remember traveling with him in Asia, and he would criticize the new temples that were going up. And I said, well, what's wrong? They're beautiful. They're spacious. They have these wonderful marbles from Italy. He says, you're just going to get sunburned through it. I said, what do you mean? He said, you come and you go, oh. You look up, and he says, where are the classrooms? Where are the boards? Where are the books? Every temple, every monastery should be a learning institution.
For those who do have an expectation that monasteries are supposed to be quiet, secluded places, like the question would be like, why do we have schools here? They're bothering us, you know? Or people who think we just want a school and we don't want to have monastics around, like, gosh, why don't we just do a school? These monastics make things too rigid, you know? But to me, you lose the actual transformative quality when you have all these different diversity things rubbing against each other, like Chinese and Western, or Asian and Western communities rubbing against each other. It's through that friction something starts to really, like how you create fire, maybe say, or how you polish a pearl.
Buddhism as a transformative teaching is not passing on a body of knowledge or beliefs or doctrines. It's about experiencing a transformational awakening or change in your heart. Therefore, it's really more like a laboratory science than, say, just a history of science course. And without the laboratory experience, you're only getting half. One of the great masters said, it's like the two wings of a bird. One wing is theory and knowledge, but the other is experiential practice.
The thing is, as far as students, it's an incredibly rich opportunity. So they're not required to go to anything, any of the ceremonies or go to any sessions, or anything, but they're in the midst of it. And they can participate in any amount they want of that. They can go to sessions. We have actually a fair number of students actually do the winter Chan session, which is pretty rigorous, right? So what it does is it gives an opportunity for there to be a cross-fertilization.
If you look at that front gate, on the one side it's got Tathagata Monastery, and the other side it's got Dharma Realm Buddhist University. If we take Tathagata Monastery's name as a symbol for the spiritual side, and the Dharma Realm Buddhist University is the symbol, because we have the schools as the education side, I'd like to see both flourish. When you think of Buddhism, you think of, don't bother me, I'm concentrating. But this is also Buddhism. The work is also Buddhism. I mean, when I first got here, I thought this was almost cowboy Buddhism. We're running around trying to fix things in the middle of, it's not quite like it is now. It was much more amateurish, but we had to keep the facility going. But is this Buddhism? Yes, this is Western Buddhism. You don't go and call up the repairman, you go and fix it yourself.
While many of the old buildings have been remodeled over the many years since the city's founding, plans for new construction are underway. At the foot of wonderful Enlightenment Mountain, a new monastery is being built, including a new Buddha hall, a precept recitation hall and library, and a male dormitory with about 50 rooms for the monks.
The intention here is to actually have this be the monastery primarily, and it opens up the front campus to be focused on education. So then the university and the schools can really develop. So out here it's very quiet, and you can see the mountains. It's a very beautiful, secluded spot. And so what happens is the front area kind of receives the public, and then you have the schools, it's the kind of the next area, and then you have this more secluded area for those who want to kind of more focus on practice. I believe in the future there's even plans to build kind of small huts, kind of places for secluded practice on the mountain. This is the male dormitory, so the monks are going to be living here on both sides, and this is all the kind of storeroom and classroom buildings, and some lay residents will be staying in the back over there. So this way, everyone can be living together and practicing together. Master Hua's vision was to really have like a whole city, right? And he felt that having something built here in the back would really allow the city then to really kind of flourish. It's like zoning, right? If you think about a city zoning, you need things zoned properly for things then to grow. Like you don't want like a commercial district right next to the residential district, right next to the industrial district. They're all kind of separated out. So this is a very big shift for the city of 10,000 Buddhas, because in the past, we are all living in the front. And so this place has been under kind of as a project that people were thinking about for actually decades.
At the time of filming, the development had yet to officially open, but as of late April, the monks have begun to move in.
So these buildings are like canvases that haven't been drawn on yet. And that was part of his thing, was to stimulate your imagination from a goodness point and wisdom point to see what you could do. His philosophy was based on a Chinese philosophical concept of root and branches. And he was meant to establish the root, and the branches then will flourish from that. And Doug and I are finding this, that another generation of students come in their teens or their 20s, and they have ideas, branch ideas from this root that we never imagined in terms of arts and theater and video, audiovisual, the whole thing, the whole online enterprise, the whole shifting ecological, moving this into energy, solar energy, things that never would occur to me.
All this activity has to be brought back to a kind of really profound humanism. I mean, all this technology and all this is about the human.
You asked about what I want to see in the next 10 years. Yes, I want to see more monks, more university students, more school students. We've got this big place, let's use it.
I came here when I was 14, so came here for high school. So I came in 1991 in July. In July here in Ukiah, it's very dry and very, very hot. But the day I arrived, it rained, and that kind of stuck with me as sort of my association of the smell of the 10,000 Buddhas.
So when I was growing up, like we moved here in, I guess, 76. Master Hua was here a lot and would even teach us. So he would come and teach classes in the mornings, and the whole community would join, including the kids. Sometimes that would be matching couplets, which is a form of Chinese poetry. He would put the first line to be matched up at night, and then everyone would come in the morning and match it. The people who were good at Chinese, the people who were learning Chinese, the monks and the nuns, the kids, everyone had a chance to do it, and then he would comment on your matches. Somebody would write the passage up on the board. And so you'd have the evening to prepare, and then your name was picked at random to talk about that passage of text. One monk, one nun, one layman, one laywoman, sometimes the kids would even go up. And he would just speak at the end.
Shari Epstein and Franklin Wu offer a unique perspective on the city. After having grown up here and gone through the IGDV school system, they decided to pursue higher education and careers outside the city. Shari attended Stanford University for her undergraduate, master's, and doctoral degrees, returning to the city every summer to teach. Franklin attended McGill and Stanford universities and worked as an engineer in Silicon Valley. But even before they left, they knew they would return. Today, they both serve on the board of directors and teach at DRBU.
I always thought that I would want to do something to contribute back, to be connected to the community, to contribute back in some way. I didn't know what that form was going to take. I had been a board member of this huge organization for 25 years. So I saw a lot of the property transactions and the building plans and all of that, the whole building expansion project in the back. I think that it is both growing and also at a place of crossroads. So I think like a lot of religious community, it's aging. And then the question has always been about how do we welcome more members? I think that's tough, especially when like a very, very respected founder pass away, when you have that transition. That happens for many, many different communities.
That was a huge transition, and now maybe we're having yet another transition.
Yeah, and potentially. So then like people that was his direct disciples are also at a time when they are about to retire very soon.
I think Master Shen Hua intently founded this place as a Buddhist city. Master Shen Hua left us, for great legacies, developing the Sangha, advancing education, promoting interfaith dialogues, and translating of Buddhist texts.
These 4 great legacies extend Master Hua's vision for the city of 10,000 Buddhas from 1973 to today, around the unified goal of the Dharma realm, a world inside a city with every element attuned to the singular goal of cultivating the Dharma. And as new buildings rise, with new programs to fill them, the community continues to look for ways to connect with the world beyond.
So sometime when I was young, they had this World Religions Conference with representatives from all different religions, and it was very exciting. But some local evangelical Christians heard of this and decided to demonstrate right outside the gate. And they had big signs, bullhorns, and they were saying all sorts of things and demonstrating against what they thought was, this horrible stuff happening at the Buddhist temple. And I remember driving by to go to the conference and feeling a little bit scared. I think being here in this community, it was always so open that I hadn't experienced that kind of religious division before. And so we went in and I thought, oh no, what's going to happen? And during lunch, Master Hua disappeared by himself. He used to drive, as Franklin said, this old, not renovated or fancy golf cart when he was older. And apparently we learned afterwards that he went out by himself and talked to the demonstrators. And he said, listen, it's very hot. This was during the summer. And you shouldn't stay out here. You should come in. If you have something to say, come in, come and join us. And they came into the big dining hall and they ate. And a couple of them actually got up to talk. And that was just such an amazing experience to me.
I was looking for community. Slowly as I've got older, my close family has passed away in England. There's not much family there. And this is my family. You've got Chinese, Americans, I don't quite see it as, distinct. We're all together here. And yes, there are different, obviously you see different nationalities here, but it's kind of like family.
10,000 is one in Chinese, which means myriad. So it represents unlimited potential. And in Buddhism, we believe that all beings have the Buddha nature. And so 10,000 Buddhas represents all living beings' potential for complete wisdom and awakening.
In Chinese, sometimes they will say like 丛林, or forest. So forest could be like a way of, like a Buddhist location, a Buddhist community or something. And so in that sense, the city has this sort of infinite depth, just like a forest. And I feel like it is a place where multiple things, functions, identities, interactions, like infinite, but many at least, can really come forth.
To those of us who are immersed in this environment, we don't see a distinction between monasticism and the city. The city is monasticism, and monasticism is the city.
When I first came into the monastery, it was a refuge from the life I was living, pretty, wild 60s. And then to do the pilgrimage, I was apprehensive about going out on the highway. And I asked the master, what do I do? And he says, when you go out on the highway, be as if you never left the monastery. I thought, okay, I'll do that. And then after 2.5 years of buying, it was time to come back, and I was like, I'm apprehensive about leaving the road and the highway to go back to the monastery. And he says, and when you come back to the monastery, be as if you never left the highway. And he said, if you can get these two together, you will have arrived. And I think that hits at that philosophy you're talking about. The highway, the monastery, the world, the religious thing are one and the same. So that's what the spirit of this is. Still working on it, but.
It's called the city of 10,000 Buddhas. It's called the city of 10,000 Buddhas. It started with a vow to bring enlightenment to every living being. From the sage who brought the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha to America to build a new foundation. It's called the city of 10,000 Buddhas. It's founded on a vision of the proper Dharma flourishing again. It's a place for cultivation, it's a place for transformation of the common one to a bodhisattva. The city's home to Guanyin Bodhisattva, compassionate, enlightened one who contemplates.